Hey, I'm Cameron Corder, and welcome to another episode of the Quarantine Leadership Series, where we hope to motivate, encourage, and inspire your leadership. Today, I'm joined by a longtime friend and acquaintance, Kevin Eastman. Kevin's a retired college and NBA basketball coach. Kevin, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, Cam. Anytime I get the opportunity to share things with others, especially in the field of leadership and working with youth, I'm all in.
Yeah, that's great. Kevin and I got acquainted 35 plus years ago when he was at Belmont Abbey, and I was running a recruiting basketball newsletter, and Kevin subscribed to it, and his staff, and even throughout his career. And I've just followed him throughout his career as he went to Wilmington and Washington State, and then throughout his NBA stops. You know, probably one of the highlights that Kevin's had in his career was he was on the staff with the Boston Celtics when they won the world championship. And one of the maybe outcomes of just a great career is Kevin has written a book called Why the Best Are the Best. And at the CEO meeting, my Y CEO meeting we're having here recently or soon, this is the gift, and this is the topic of just talking about leadership is with Kevin. But one of the keys to Kevin's success is he is just such a nice guy, just a great guy throughout his careers. And he's got a wide family tree, basketball tree that we were talking about before we hit record. But Kevin, one of my favorite parts of this book, and all the business books talk about trust being number one in leadership, you know, a trait that in the relationship that you have to have. But talk a little bit about trust and how you develop trust as a coach.
Well, I think developing trust is first understanding how trust is built and also how it's destroyed. You know, I like to think of trust as what's going on in the housing industry, not right now, right? The home building industry. Trust is either under construction or it's being torn down, right? So one of the two. So it's a daily drip, drip exercise. And, to me, you build trust by understanding that it needs three things. Trust needs time, consistency, and proof. It needs time because none of us are going to trust anyone the very first time we meet them. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But trust is developed over time with that drip, drip, drip philosophy, right? It needs consistency. If you say you're going to do something, do it. If you're going to lead with positivity. Don't be positive, negative, getting on people, then patting them on the back. You know, there's the inconsistency can cause doubt, and doubt can eventually lead to a lack of trust. And it needs proof. Fulfill your promises. Do what you say you're going to do. Right. All of these things are important to building trust. And where I believe trust is most important, it is that it is a key fundamental of getting something that is so important in leadership, and that's buy-in, right? As a coach, we wanted buy-in from our players on all of the things that we were going to do. As a leader, we want to buy into everything that we think we need to do in order to be a great organization. And but there's certain parts to buy in too. Trust is one of them. But in order to get buy-in, you must first get believe in, right? I'm not going to buy into anybody I don't believe in. And in order to believe in somebody, I got to trust them, right? I got to trust them. And then in order to trust them, I got to know that as we say, that they live in the world of the truth, right? That it is a world of integrity. It is not a world of lies. So all of these things are really important when you talk about that word trust. And, when you give someone your trust is when you have the best opportunity to receive their best. That's why trust is so important, because once someone knows that you trust them and believe in them, that's when they open themselves up and give you their best. There's no doubt, there's no fear, there's no concern, right? Because they know you trust them, they know you believe in them. And the last thing I guess I'll say along this lines, and you'll see me keep looking out because the storm's coming through right now. And I want to be ready to tell you guys bye if all of a sudden the power goes off. But Trust has eyes and ears. I know that sounds silly, but it does. It has eyes and ears. It pays attention to what you say and what you do, and it evaluates the consistency of both, right? So if I say A, B, and C, but I do L, M, N, O, P, there's an inconsistency there. And the natural follow-up to that is, boy, I'm not sure if I can trust, what they're saying, what they're doing. So I think trust, just remember, it's a day by day thing. It's fulfilling your promises. It's living with integrity. That's how you build it.
So a lot of people that are watching this are what I would in the Y world are branch execs or they're COOs. And as an assistant coach, how did you help develop trust, or could you, for the head coach? How do they support the culture of trust in an organization for the CEO and up?
Well, I think that there's a loyalty factor there. I think you have to totally understand what the top leader is, not only what they are trying to do, but why they are trying to do it that way. In coaching, it's the system you put in. A player may love to play zone defense, but you believe in order to win at your institution or your organization in the NBA, you got to play man-to-man defense. Well, as an assistant coach to Doc Rivers, I had to help by explaining the why to our players. And I also had to tell them that I totally trust in this plan. I totally trust. And I trust with the words that come out of my mouth and also my body language. And I often talk about this to leadership teams. You go in there and you have that tough meeting, right? And you come out with a solution or a plan, right? When you're in that meeting, you're going to debate, you're going to disagree, but once you walk out, you're going to commit to because ultimately someone has to make the final decision, and that's the leader, right? And us who made the decision to work at that company or with that team, we also made a decision to work with and under that leader. So when we leave that room, we've got to commit. And that's by the words we say. And let's use the same example. If a player comes up to you and we're working on zone defense and they say, Coach, man, I don't know about this zone defense. And you say to them, yeah, this wasn't my decision. Doc Rivers wanted to do this. I feel you, right? I have just totally broken a trust right there. Or if I do the same thing when the player walks up, and I've seen this actually in hallways of corporate America, right? When I speak to different corporations, go into their buildings and their companies, right? The leader wants something done. An employee is talking to maybe a manager, and the employee says, "Man, I don't understand that decision." And you're like, "Not me." So my body language is saying to them, no, I don't trust it either, right? So I think you have to understand it in order to trust it, right? And then you have to be maybe the leader's best marketing and promotional campaign manager to make sure that your players know that I'm all in with what we're doing. Now, as a leader, one of the other things about trust is the visual and verbal example you set, right? All these things you want us to do, we'll trust you if we see you doing those things. We'll trust you if we hear those things coming out of your mouth, right? So I think the biggest thing is just live with integrity, right? Believe in what you believe in. Big part of leadership, right? Yeah. So I'm following you, Cam. So here's what I want to know. I got to believe that you believe in what you say you believe in. I got to know that. That's when a form of trust can be built.
And that's great. We deal with a lot of young staff, probably earlier in their career, in the early 20s, just out of college, whatever age. But sometimes we see as leaders more potential in them than they see themselves. How do you get them to see their potential and to do the work to really reach that potential?
Well, in terms of the last part, do the work, let them see you doing the work. I have what I call this philosophy, this concept of what I call real leadership. And that word real is an acronym. And the E is be the example. And what I always say to leaders is be who you want them to be. because then you don't always have to remind them verbally, right? They'll actually show you. I should be showing my people, my young people, what leadership is and how leaders act and how leaders talk and how leaders, believe it or not, have to listen, right? Which is the L, by the way, of real, the acronym. And I'm not going to give you the R and the A. You guys have to figure that one out. But part of it is actually the R, developing a relationship with those young people such that you can get a piece of their mind. Because in leadership, it's a battle for mind space, M-I-N-D. How can we get into the minds of the people we lead so that when they come into work each and every day, they're giving us their best effort and they're doing it the way our culture says is the best way to do it. And when you're talking about relationships, it's not really, like I always get asked this, Kevin, you know, we have this really good employee and they're high producing, but we have no idea what makes them tick. They do some crazy stuff, right? And I'll always answer that in the same way. Like for us in pro sports, we weren't as concerned with what makes people tick. And I know all the books say you're supposed to be concerned with what makes people tick, but that was third on our list. So that begs the question, if that was third, what's 1 and 2? Well, number 1 is we weren't concerned as much as what made them tick, but we were concerned with what made them talk. Because if we could get them to talk, we could find out what makes them tick, I think, to a greater degree and a greater depth. And you have to get young people to talk to you so you know what's going on in their heads, so you can maybe do the second part. We didn't care so much about what made them tick, but we cared what made them listen. Because if they were willing to listen, we might be able to change the way they tick. So how do you get that talk and listen component? By developing relationships. Because in order to get to the mind, you have to go through the heart. You know, people may think, well, pro sports, there's nothing about empathy and getting to know your players. And actually the complete opposite. The 100% complete opposite. Championship teams know how important relationship building is, right? We spend probably more time actually developing, improving, right, relationships than we maybe did even in X and O. So if you can develop the relationship, then you have the opportunity to speak the truth to these young people that you're talking about. So I think it's spending time with them, simplifying your message of what leadership is and breaking it down, but also getting their input too. For instance, I would say when I was the vice president of the Clippers, I knew some people in the organization wanted to move up, maybe become a GM and maybe vice president of basketball operations. So I would have meetings with them and say, okay, let's break this down. I think I know what you need to do in order to get there. But if I just tell you, it may not sink in. Right. So let's reverse this. You teach me what I need to do and what I need to be very good at, well-versed in order to hold that position of general manager. Well, of course, they may say 4 of the 10 things needed. Then me as a leader, again, I'm not going to give it to them, but I'm going to ask them questions. Well, you didn't mention anything about the owner. Like, is there anything, do you have to have a relationship with the owner or you don't deal with them? Then it gets them thinking about, okay, yeah, I probably do. And then I might add, Danny Ainge, when he was the president of the Boston Celtics, he talked to our owner minimum 6 days a week. But I wouldn't tell them that to begin with. I wanted that, because here's what happens with messaging, Cam, and you know this, like clinics, right? Or if I was in there at that meeting speaking to your team, right? They can do one of 2 things. They can take all their notes and memorize them. And then when that situation comes up, oh yeah, Kevin said with trust, it needs time, consistency, and proof. Well, it needs time, consistency, and proof. Well, what does that mean, ma'am? What does that mean, sir? You haven't thought about it. You just memorized it. Or you can go home after you've learned all these new things, which I try and do, right? I'm looking around because I have so many notes on my desk right now from some things that I'm working on now, but there are things I've learned. But you can put sustained thought to what you heard and internalize those things. right? And that's what I want to do with young people who want to move up in their field, whether it be leadership or coaching, right? Uh, get them involved in their own, answering their own questions, get them thinking more than they thought they had to think when they first asked you about moving up, right? But it all starts with relationships, because if I don't have a relationship with someone, they may not listen as deeply as they need to. They may not trust what I'm saying, right? They may not think what I'm telling them is the truth, right? They may think that this is criticism, not coaching. So all those things I think go into uh, helping young people move up. Now, you as the older person who has the knowledge and the wisdom, you've got to know your stuff too, right? Whether you think that they need to know 10 things in order to move up and be a great leader, you've got to know those 10 things backwards and forwards and why they're important. But again, you don't just hand it to them. You make them earn the knowledge.
That's great. That's just an aside. How did you get the 19, 20-year-old multimillionaire to want to, how'd you pull that out of them?
Well, first off, relationship building. It's amazing the access you have to people's minds and hearts when they trust you and that they think that you are in it for them, not for you, right? You know, I talked about that word buy-in. You got to get buy-in from your people first before they even start to listen to you, whether that is a superstar like Kevin Garnett, or that is the last player on the team, like maybe I was, right? So how do you get buy-in? Number one, competence. People will buy into people that they think really know what in the heck they're talking about, right? Number two is trustworthiness. Can I trust this person that's telling me this stuff? If I feel that I can, I'm going to buy in. Number three, we always felt work ethic, right? Because so often as a leader, one of the things we want our people to do is to work real hard at learning their job better, work real hard at their job itself, work real hard at getting on the phone and trying to get new clients, whatever that is, right? And the fourth part of it is sincerity. Who are you in this for? When they know that you are doing this for them to help them get to where they want to go, you're not doing it for your own personal advancement, they're willing to buy in. And then the last component we felt for buy-in, and this is how we all five of these things were present to get these superstars to buy in, is we had to be able to answer, and this wasn't the case 20 years ago, but now we feel we have to be able to answer the question of why. Why that way? Why are you saying this? Why do I need to do this? Right? So that's those are really important to start the process of being able to get into the minds and the hearts of those superstars. But here's the deal: people have a misconception. They think all these great players, and I've had a chance to work with Kobe in the offseason, Kevin Durant. You can go on and on, right? Someone told me recently that I've coached 11 Hall of Fame players. I haven't really sat down to figure out who they are, all 11 just yet. But I'm sure that's true. And what I found out was this: one of the common characteristics they all had was curiosity. They wanted to know, what can they do to get a little bit better, right? Because they were already in the category of best, but there were some other people in that category too. So how can I maintain, if not maybe improve, so when the best go against the best, I might be able to win that night. So when we played the Lakers in the finals, Kobe wanted to rip the heart out of Kevin Garnett. Kevin Garnett wanted to reach into Kobe's heart and rip that out and break Kobe's will and break Powell's will, right? Well, how do I do that? I just need that next thing, right? And I get that through people that I believe in, right? Because I'll buy into that.
So, and just curious, your eyes on the NBA and your career, and even now, who's really good in the NBA? What coach is really good at the relationship building?
Well, go to the champions. Steve Kerr, right? One of the best.
Really?
Right? Yeah. there's a good book that all young people should read by Pete Carroll, who won a Super Bowl, but also lost one in devastating fashion, right? Win Forever, it's called, because it goes through his how he really was able to get over the hump in his career. But people don't know about Pete is he got fired twice before he got the USC job. He got fired from 2 NFL teams. So you have the Steve Kerrs of the world, right? And just staying in our sport, Doc Rivers, great relationship guy, right? Almost all of the NBA guys are right now. Billy Donovan, unbelievable relationship guy. The single number one thing he wanted to do when he took over Oklahoma City before he took over Chicago was to develop relationships with the guys. But I think you can go Popovich. Coach Pop is unbelievable. Dave Tella probably may have told you stories about Pop. He's unbelievable relationship building. Like one of the keys to him winning championships, he believes, is the meals that they eat together after games and the wine that they drink. Not necessarily in that order either with Pop, but he bringing guys together. Like I heard someone say, very seldom are there like major disagreements and arguments over a great meal, right? Now, maybe when the meal's over, yeah, we're going at each other and all that, but then that's Pop, right? But all of them are. There's a young kind of up and coming coach coaching the Philadelphia Eagles right now. And I just read an article about him, and he's only in year 2 there, Nick Sirianni. And he talks about one of the first things he had to do that first year was to develop relationships with guys so that they're willing to open up, because when you can get into, when you can give, and when you have each other's heart, that's when you can go places. That's when special can happen.
Man, that's awesome. You see a great thread of leadership that we need to be as bosses at all levels. That's great. Kevin, do you have a wild story growing up in Richmond? As a basketball player, did you ever spend any time at the YMCA?
Well, I used to work out there when I was coaching. I joined the Y. We didn't have a Y in my hometown, so I didn't even know what that was until actually I got to college, because there were some YMCA's in Richmond, right? Yeah. So I have shot on their baskets. I have lifted what would be, my wife would say, minimal weight in the weight room there. I have been in steam rooms in the YMCA's. But you know what I've also noticed? How nice and caring people are who work there.
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate saying that.
Yeah.
The Y invented basketball. Many people watching this and Ys across the country, we run a lot of youth basketball. I mean, hundreds of thousands of kids across the country. If you had to give us some advice on what we should focus on working with 6 to 12-year-olds, 6 to 15, just young people, what should we be focusing on as we run youth basketball?
Well, when it deals with the sport specifically, it's the foundational pieces, right? And those foundational pieces are the fundamentals of what needs to be established in order to be a good player, the fundamentals of what the importance of working and playing with 4 other players, because what you find is those special ones that can continue to advance in their career. Part of that advancement is not only their individual skills, but also how they can mold them and provide them for 4 other players that are on the floor with them. I think there has to be an element of fun, right? I know when I did my youth camps here in Richmond, when I left left college coaching, one of my goals each and every day was to get every young person who came to our camps to smile and actually laugh each day, because that told me they enjoyed it, right? Teach first, win second it would be my philosophy. Be very encouraging, right? And again, this goes, you obviously have to do all the fundamental things and know how to teach, know how to motivate, know how to inspire young people, right? Be the example, which is what we talked about earlier. Let them see what someone who's in basketball, how they conduct themselves. And then the other part might be a part that maybe if a parent is listening, they may not want to hear. But my son went up through AAU basketball. Actually played Y leagues here early in his career, early in his life. And I always used to kind of observe when I was there. And here I am, I'm coaching in the NBA. I've coached college. We've won an NBA championship, right? And I am maybe the quietest parent there because I remembered, oh yeah, I coach a little bit too. And I think we should let the coach coach. Because I one time told the AAU organization here in Richmond, I said, you guys should do this. You should have every parent line up of all the kids line up around the court on a half court, right? And we're going to blindfold one of the children and start them at the center jump circle. And then I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, go. And all of you are going to communicate with this blindfolded young player on how to get to the basket and make a layup. We know they can probably dribble blindfolded, but how do we get them to the basket? Well, you know what happened? We heard, go right, go right, go right. At the same time, a little bit to your left, a little bit to your left. Then we would hear, back up, back up, back up. This is what the kids hear. And now you got a kid doing all this when really, if his coach was allowed with that one voice, he could get him right there to the basket and say, okay, now just bank it against the basket as if you didn't have that blindfold on. But because all the parents thought they knew which way to go, that kid was going like this. And that's what they hear during the game. Shoot it, shoot it, shoot. No, pass it, pass it, pass it. So I always used to tell Jake, listen to your coach, because that's why he has the title. Now, if it's something crazy, if they're yelling and cursing at our children, different story. But I would address that after the game.
Any parents yelling at you in the NBA?
Parents, our wives, our children. I remember one game we looked up, it was a timeout, and Doc Rivers' wife was reading a book. And I thought, oh my gosh, she must not think this game's any good, right? So, no, at that level, I mean, you're getting paid. There's some things that you don't want to hear, right? I just don't understand those people, right? Yeah. Because one of the things that we teach, if we continue to just backstab the coaches of our children, is that, you can continue to do that, because be who you want them to be. Maybe your children will end up being that, right? Yeah. So, and I understand that we have a personal vested interest in our children, but a big lesson we all have to learn is how do we deal with mistakes, embarrassment, failures, right? So there's a lot of teaching moments when maybe things don't go well for our children too.
Obviously. Kevin, thanks so much for your time. If you want Kevin's book or to learn more about Kevin, or even to invite Kevin, we need to get him in front of more YMCA people. Go to kevineastman.net. You can get on his website, order his books, get to know him a little bit, or you can contact me and I can try to connect you. But Kevin, all my best to you and Wendy. Appreciate all the efforts that you do and just sharing your leadership skills and expertise around the country. But thanks everybody for watching. Make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel, like and share this podcast. Kevin, again, thanks so much for being who you are.
All right. Thanks, Cam. Keep up the great work.
See ya.